Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I am so happy to bring our guest to you today. Yanik Silver has been called a cosmic catalyst, a Maverick Mischief-Maker, and a Galactic Goofball. He redefines how business is played in the 21st century at the intersection of more profits, more fun, and more impact. Yanik is the creator of the Cosmic Journal, author of Evolved Enterprise, and the founder of Maverick 1000, a global network of top entrepreneurs and visionary entrepreneurs making a serious difference in the world without taking themselves too seriously. In fact, it's not unusual to find him dressed as a lemur, a showgirl, or even in matching mermaid tails with Sir Richard Branson. Welcome to the show, Yanik. So happy you're here.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yes, all true stories.
So speaking of stories, that's always how we start these shows. Can you give us a little bit of your story?
Yeah, I'll give you the super brief version. But I think it's got to start with kind of way back. So our family is Russian immigrants and came over when I was 3 years old. And my dad ended up starting a medical equipment sales and service company. And I grew up working in that business. So while my friends were living at the beach or doing all sorts of fun stuff, I was selling medical equipment. I was telemarketing at 14. I was at 16. The only way I got a car was if I went out and cold called doctors. And I don't know how much cold calling you've ever done. And it's
enough.
Yeah, enough that it's not that fun.
No,
usually.
No,
yeah.
It's not.
And so as a 16-year-old cold calling, essentially 50, 60-year-old doctors, it was quite a task, but I did eventually sell some stuff. And then one of my doctor clients gave me like a marketing tape that kind of like turned my lights on about like, oh, there's another way of doing this that doesn't require me to actually cold call, and I could write ads, or I could write letters, or I could have great sales copy that was more compelling, and have doctors raise their hands and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to talk to you about this. And that was just like fascinating to me that I could do something like that. And so that really turned the lights on, which then turned into me helping grow my dad's business to a national player instead of a regional player. And then working with some of my doctor clients, helping them with their marketing. And then it turned into moving to online and doing really well in the online world. And then people were like, oh, how'd you do that? Which then it kind of turned it into, let me help you with whatever you're doing, take your knowledge or information and sell it online. And then about 15 years ago, I asked a really simple question, which is, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And that kind of, has been the focus of what I've been playing around with for the last 15 years.
Yeah. So let's go to that chapter, because this is where all the Galactic Goofball stuff is happening. So give us a little bit of that story. And by the way, massive congrats on your parents for saying you're going to go out and cold call and understand what this is like. It sucks for any teenager to have to do something like that, but I'm sure it taught you a lot.
Oh, I got a massive head start. I mean, looking back, it was amazing. At the time, it was not as amazing. But I don't know. I feel like we've been like too lenient with our kids, where I haven't forced them to do any of that. But yeah, I mean, it's the so the question was about the asking about
take us from you figuring out, does this make me happy, to the next chapter, because I know what you're doing now makes you happy, and I'd love for folks to understand.
Yeah, and that was a pretty interesting spot, because before that I had 7 or 8 different projects, all hit the 7-figure mark, just kind of intuitively, playing around with whatever I thought was most interesting, most energetic. And then when I asked myself that question, I'm a big journaler, and in my journal, the answer was no, I wasn't totally happy. And outside looking in, you would think everything was great, making a lot of money, driving the hot sports car, had the, really good reputation in that space, like all the things that you've sort of been taught are,
that's the definition of success, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't like black and white either, because I was helping a whole lot of people. Like, people would come up to me, even if I might not be speaking somewhere, they'd be like, oh my God, Yanik, you changed my life. I sell guitar lessons online now, or I, do whatever. And it's very rewarding, but it didn't feel like the ultimate expression of who I was and what I could be doing. So then I'm like, all right, well, where would I be happiest? And in my journal, I created these 3 interconnected circles. I didn't know that was a Venn diagram.
Right.
And originally it was a $, a happy face, and a heart. And I'm like, okay, that seems like, a good start for everything. And that's where that make more, have more fun, give more back kind of came from. And so I'm like, all right, well, I want to hang out more with my friends who are other entrepreneurs, and let's go off and do some amazing adventures. We'll combine it with business and have a charity element, and sounds really great. And about $400,000 in, my wife's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And because I had like started like cutting off a lot of the other stuff that was making me money, but didn't feel like it was in complete alignment.
Yeah.
So it was a real reckoning point. And at that spot, you really lean into your why much deeper, right? So my why wasn't to build an adventure travel company. So originally that thing was called Maverick Business Adventures. And so it was like, all right, well, I don't need to build an adventure travel company. And so what is it? And so I started leaning in. It would have been really easy to kind of like go back to the golden handcuffs. And the golden handcuffs are, what you've done before, what's easy, what's making you money, pays bills, and you got kids, you have a family, you have the mortgage, like all the things that the pragmatic,
the stuff that's
yeah,
safe. Yeah.
The pragmatic way would be like, all right, we'll go do this, and it's not even like it's not that bad, right? Because I was still doing the stuff that I did enjoy, but it didn't feel like the ultimate expression. So I'm like, I'm gonna keep going with this, and it really forced me. Like I sold my Aston Martin, and not like boohoo, but yeah, I'm like, oh, whatever, it's a thing, and then I like
with you.
yeah, and so I had this sort of beat up MDX that was our third car, and I could have easily like leased another Mercedes or whatever to keep up appearances, but I'm like, no, I want to I really wanted to see, like, let's strip away everything what was that were these outside identifying
to bring you
pieces,
joy, and you were
right?
choosing joy with every decision you were making. That's so intentional and so cool.
And alignment, and just like what is it, because we're as entrepreneurs, so much of like our self-worth is connected to maybe our net worth or our outside success or whatever it is. I'm like, all right, let's play with this and see what it is. And when I got to the spot where I could be really appreciative of that MDX, I'm like, oh, I can throw my paddle boards in here, my dirty paddle boards from the river. I can, I don't have to get it detailed all the time. Like my Aston Martin, I can park it anywhere. I don't really, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then I got to that spot where there was just joy overfilling, just, I don't know, just gratitude for everything that you had. Things started like reconfiguring, and it was really interesting too, because I had been able to meet a lot of really interesting sort of business celebrities, obviously, in the bio you mentioned Branson. So he's, one of my biggest business heroes, but then a lot of like sort of unknown business icons or people that were influences, and they all had like a little piece of the puzzle, which then became Evolved Enterprise. And so we started leaning into like, well, what's the real deeper mission here? And again, it wasn't building an adventure travel company. So it became changing the way business is played. And I love deeper questions, right? Your questions create your answers. And so I used my non-dominant hand, and I asked, what would my 111-year-old self tell me? And so I asked that question, and the answer I got was, light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. And I'm like, ooh. And so we changed the name to Maverick 1000, really leaned into this idea of evolutionary growth for entrepreneurs. And so like the essence remained the same. We changed it from a dollar sign to a tree to represent growth. So personal growth plus business growth, and then the impact side, and then the fun. So like the essence remained the same, but the expression changed. And then things really started changing as well, because we leaned deeper and deeper into that mission.
I love that. And I love that you changed it to a tree. I think that sends such a different message than a dollar sign. I think this is it. I know it's we had this plan to speak today, but I have to tell you, like, a lot of the most recent conversations I had last week and even today were all about this topic, like following your why, doing something that is fulfilling your purpose in life. And so this is really timely. But I love that we're presenting this to the audience now, because I really do believe the people that are the most successful, and I don't just mean financially, they are the ones that feel the most fulfilled, because they are living their why. They're really living their purpose. And I love that you figured that out. And would you agree, and you tell me in your words, but that when you're doing that intentionally, choosing the way you live, the money flows. Like it comes.
Yeah. So I always have, I believe that there's this interrelation between like we'll go back to my little Venn diagram, right? Like, so the tree, the happy face and the heart.
Yeah.
So the more fun you're having, the happier you are actually,
Sure.
the more the more growth you're having, the more in whether it's financial or just personal evolutionary growth. And then also the more impact that you're making, that also affects your
Mm.
happiness and all of it. So I think it's all absolutely interconnected.
Yeah.
And what I've been finding recently, I don't know if you would say this is the same for you or the clients that you work with, is like it used to be that you could be 80% aligned or
Mhm.
85% aligned.
Yeah.
And now it feels like you really have to be 95, 90%, 99%, 100, I don't know if you're ever 100%, but you can be,
I
it's,
think there's always crap you don't want to do, but I
yeah,
think you're right. That's a really high ratio. But I really think it's so much more geared to entrepreneurs than anyone in corporate jobs, because in corporate jobs, you have those golden handcuffs. You aren't designing your destiny, you're following someone else's mission. So you don't have that same autonomy to really just say, this is my bliss. This is where I'm headed. Would you agree with that?
that hasn't been my world because I've only been an entrepreneur for
Yeah.
what it's been 25 years or so,
Right.
maybe longer. But so and then I only work with other visionary entrepreneurs. So it's like that the corporate world is not my space, but I do
Right.
believe in everyone's autonomy and sovereignty, that they can choose their own path, and whether that means you have a lot more time than you even believe, that you probably
True.
scroll on Instagram or watch Netflix or do
Yeah.
whatever, that there is opportunity to really step into what is your joy and bliss, and what does that look like. But for sure, entrepreneurs, we have more of an opportunity to, I think, really connect our that alignment of what do we want to see in the world, along with what is our work. And it's not, but it's not as easy as like, oh great, well, you're an entrepreneur, you can do whatever you want.
No.
It's not as,
Work. It's super
yeah,
hard.
right.
So what do the best entrepreneurs, and you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, what do the best ones do in your mind? What character traits do they share? And maybe some of the things that they all consistently do.
Mm. they there's a I mean, growth is a big part. Like, they're always interested in how do they grow themselves. Like, they're very curious.
Yeah.
And even, mentioned Richard, so Branson, like, very very curious. Like, I can talk to him one time, and he's on a different diet because he's like, oh yeah, I'm trying this thing out, and
Yeah.
they love to experiment too, right?
Yeah.
So that they'll experiment with themselves as an experiment of one, about certain things, and they're willing to try different things.
Yeah.
They are creative focused, like they're about the creative solution
Mm.
to whatever it is. They're also value driven. Like, I've taught my kids. We used to do a family entrepreneurship event for 7 years, and I would teach the young kids, very young kids, about business and entrepreneurship. And I really tried to boil it down to value creation. So one of the very first things I wrote in my journal was, I get rich by enriching others 10x to 100x what they pay me in return. And I've always, worked on that as kind of my North Star. So most successful entrepreneurs I know are very value driven.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, how do we create more value? Because automatically that's going to create more value for me in the world, and so on. And they're also focused on, expanded circles of impact, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just for them. It's not like, what can I get, how, or even just what can I get for my family. It's for my team, my customers, my community, the world. So they have a higher way of thinking as well, which is exciting.
I love that. I think that's so important. That's how I run my business, and that's how the people I surround myself with do. So I love that you called that out. No one's done that before on the show. Attention, visionary leaders. Are you ready to elevate your leadership style and create an exceptional workplace that stands out from the crowd? I'm here to introduce you to a game-changing resource that will transform the way you lead and shape your company culture. It's time to embrace the power of top-down culture. This practical guide empowers your leadership for lasting success, helping you create a workplace where everyone thrives. Get top-down culture today, and let's reshape the future of leadership together. So how did you meet Sir Richard, and how do you work with him today? I know, but I think the audience wants to hear.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many entrepreneurs love his story and what he's about, and so he's always been like a business hero, and I'm a big believer in. So I had this ultimate life list where you write down like what did I want to have, do, experience, be, whatever, and one of them was like have lunch with Richard Branson. And I'm like, all right. And one of my friends met him at a charity event, and he called me up. He's like, hey, we're gonna do a trip to Necker Island, which is Richard's island, and do you want to go? I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And so I paid a pretty decent amount of money to go there, and got the picture or whatever. But and I had a great time, and it was amazing. And then I'm like, hey, are we doing it again? And he's like, nah, I don't think so. And I'm like, well, why don't we split the island? So then I would bring half the people, he'd bring half the people, and he's like, okay. So we did that for a couple of years, and now the last 6 or 7 years, we've really taken that over. And
so hold on, wait, we got to back up, because we kind of glossed over what it is we're doing. So you created an event for entrepreneurs,
CEOs, and leaders to come there.
And was this his idea or your idea, or how did it?
It was, so my friend Joe, his name's Joe Polish. He originally decided to bring people there to the island, and it had some of the pieces of what we do today and then when we combined forces, we added more of the fun elements and a little bit more of the impact elements. So it's still there before, and so each time we actually have a key project or something that we're working on. So the entrepreneurs that we bring, they pay a pretty good premium to be there, and because the island is expensive, and it's a really unique opportunity to hang out with Richard in that way. But we're also having money that goes into funding unique projects that we're brainstorming and working on. So the nonprofit that we work with is called Virgin Unite, which is the Branson family, all about entrepreneurial solutions to big issues in the world. And so one year, our favorite project was the year that we actually had a World War II ship that they kind of showed us as, this is sitting at the next island over, or 2 islands over, and it's going to get sold for scrap. What do you think you can do with it? And they had an idea of like, well, it could be an art reef, and they presented a potential idea. And so that started with sort of the half-baked idea. And then I love, making entrepreneurs, use their competitive nature for good, split them up into teams and have them present ideas. And this one team also had people that build Burning Man art cars on the team. And so they're like, we're going to build this gigantic Kraken that's going to be on top of the ship and make it like a dive destination. And they had these other aspects to it. And so we raised some more money right on the spot for it before it was about to be sold for scrap to India. And it was a year-long project, and reworked the whole ship, sunk it, turned it into this amazing artificial reef. And there's a lot of marine life now that lives on it. And it's a really cool dive spot in the BVI.
It sounds amazing. And I love the spirit of brainstorming and giving people the space to do that. That's how I always led my teams. And I always said, I don't have all the answers. So what else are you guys thinking about? I love that you did that. That's amazing. So talk to me about, what is a cosmic catalyst?
What is a cosmic catalyst? Well, it's probably easier to show what a cosmic catalyst is. Why don't we do this? I have a set of cards. Cosmic Journey Oracle cards. We pull a card, and the cosmic catalyst is kind of like your cosmic alarm clock.
Oh, cool. So
a cosmic alarm clock is, something that usually is kind of like a very silent, a quiet voice that's in your head about like something is that you want to, there's something to change or transform. And you can either hit snooze on it or answer it. And I've had that cosmic alarm clock multiple times in my life. My first internet project that ever worked was literally 3 o'clock in the morning. I got up with this idea for something that became my first $1 million idea. And that whole question of, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? Like, that was also a cosmic alarm clock moment. So there's these times in our lives that are these, I don't know, little poignant moments. And so these cards are designed to help kind of spur them on.
I mean, this is like tarot. It's like business tarot right now.
Yeah, exactly. So these, the Oracle, and I'm gonna shuffle. You tell me when to stop.
Okay. I'm ready. Okay, stop.
Okay, ready? All right. So
Are
you are,
perfectly imperfect. Ain't that the truth?
I'll read you the card and then there's a prompt, which is the Cosmic Catalyst prompt.
Okay.
Okay. So you are perfectly imperfect. We somehow want to be seen as perfect with absolutely no defects, holes, or scars, but these imperfections make you beautiful more rather than less, or sorry, make you more beautiful rather than less. They give you more empathy and more strength to face anything. When your heart is cracked wide open, the light finds its way in. That's how the song of our soul can flow into our lives. Crack wide open. Your pain has meaning. Your sorrow has held tremendous significance beyond what you may have considered already. Embrace it all because your healed wounds become the medicine our world desperately needs now. So here's the cosmic catalyst, which is the prompt, which is what greater meaning can I now see coming from my greatest suffering?
I mean, my greatest career suffering was what prompted me to build my company and start this podcast and do all the work that I've been doing the last 2 years. So I think I'm doing that, but I know that there is a much higher purpose and I'm working that out as we speak. So
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah. So that prompted you to do this, which is now, I'm sure, helped at least more than one person. And
yeah, whoever's listening to the show, let's hope.
So, that to me is a catalyst, right? Like the catalyst
Yeah.
is that instigator, that nudge, that,
Yeah.
and the cosmic catalyst is like you're also connected to the cosmic energy, cosmic consciousness of we're going through a pretty significant evolutionary period.
I agree.
And that's why your work with leaders, helping them lead more with higher integrity and alignment, and that's that's needed right now. For I think that business has the greatest leverage for making a difference in the world.
I agree.
And it's such a unique spot to be in. And of course, the leaders, when they're healed wholly, then they're able to create these ripples of impact into what they're doing, and again with their team and community and the customers and these ever expanding ripples. But yeah, I mean, for me too, like this idea of like greatest suffering for sure was that time period of like everything was previously working really well, and it was just like I didn't even need to change, but I think you kind of like get bonked on the head harder and harder if you're not willing to listen, because it could be like, so I said 400,000. One of my friends were having lunch a couple years ago, and he's like, I just saw him again recently. He's like 400,000. He's like, mine was 4 million. I'm like, well, all right, and so it could be financial, it could be relationship, it could be health, it could be any number of things. But when we listen to like those small whispers, then it doesn't have to be the big bonk on the head.
Well, and I think you're right. That's just a statement for life. If you continually find yourself up against a wall, have you been there before? And if you have, clearly haven't learned the lesson. You need to learn that lesson before you're going to not get bonked again. So I totally subscribe to that. So Sir Richard is also one of my business heroes, and his leadership style is one I quote often. I mean, he's obviously, and the reason why is because he's heart-centered, but he takes care of his people first, and they take care of the clients as a result. And I have to imagine that's got to be pretty inspiring to watch. And do the other leaders that travel to Necker get that message, take it, run with it, or come to the table already like that?
I think they're predisposed in some way because they're,
They like him.
But it's such a unique environment because we get to immerse ourselves in his world. And you learn a lot from him just by watching the way he interacts with the team, and not even so much like what he even says, right? Like, because just like kids, right? Like, it's like your kids will they, you can tell them one thing, but whatever you do is gonna kind of resonate more loudly than whatever it is. So just watching how he interacts. I remember, one time, so he had also bought the next island over, Mosquito Island. And we've
great name, but okay.
What's that?
Not a great name, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the name just came with it.
Right.
And so we've had a 15-year, I guess, relationship, or 14 years. So I've got to see the island also progress.
Yeah.
And I remember like one year, just watching him interact with the general manager that was there. and he'd be, it's funny, like him taking meetings, right? He'd take meetings on paddle boards. He'd like take his paddleboard over to the next island for the meeting, or kiteboard over or whatever.
That's so
And so
cool.
it's hilarious. We sometimes will swim to the other island. He loves that.
Yeah.
And so we get there, and he's, we're just kind of walking the island with him, and I'm listening to the conversation. And part of the conversation was about the roads. And so the way that Richard formed like a question, it wasn't like a directive. It was just like, and it's just a little thing, and it just really stuck out. And it's just like, hey, do you think that we should do this or something like that? But it wasn't like, hey, I really think we should make the road.
It wasn't, I have all the answers. It was more a question like,
yeah. And it was just like, it like gave a little bit of direction, but also had enough opening that they can decide what's best, because that's their position and they know.
I love that.
It's just like a little thing, but it was a good window into the way of empowering your leaders.
I love that. And I think that's such a humble and smart way to lead. So you talk a lot about fun and having fun within the business world and within your job or your entrepreneurial life. So talk to me about your view of fun and why is it important to you? I mean, Sir Richard obviously incorporates that. I mean, paddleboarding to the next meeting is a great way to do your job, but give me your feelings on fun.
I mean, I
as you have this rainbow
explanation, right? Like fun is
but I do think there's a fair amount of the population that really takes business very seriously. They might be
their whole lives seriously.
Probably. And they're probably operating from an insecure style of leadership. They really subscribe to micromanagement. And micromanagement, there's no fun. There's just not. So, I'm trying to teach people that fun is an important part of business.
I mean, I like even, I think fun is huge. I think play is an even better representation of what it is, because you think about, there's a great book by, I think he's a psychologist, Stuart Brown, about fun, play. It's just called Play. And he talks about every mammal plays. And they play for learning, they play for like social engagement, and they play like in different ways. And so like, I love the notion of play, because you're going to get more done when it feels playful, because it's just, it's more fun. And it doesn't have to be play like, oh, we're going to go, I don't know, go play on the playground because that's team building or whatever. There's ways of creating purposeful play, which I really love. Is like, it's like there's this underlying way. So we do a lot of fun, random things. Like just at our last event, I did a little experiment. I called it Evil Schemes for Global Good. And evil is an acronym, and so it was a game show, included puppets. That was one of the puppets. And then we gave puppets to some of the entrepreneurs who were like it's kind of like Shark Tank meets Whose Line Is It Anyway meets
oh my God,
Muppet Show.
So up my alley. I love it. Keep going.
And so we had two teams of entrepreneurs kind of compete around an idea that was a business opportunity idea that could be started for under $1,000 and make somebody more than 1,000. And that was the premise. But it was just fun. And then at the end of it, there was a result, and it was, it's still in beta, but it got to the spot where there's definitely potential of what it can be. And I think people just really enjoyed it. And I've done a lot of stuff where we just do some playful ways. Like, anyone can network, right? Like, networking is kind of a, let's say,
necessity.
Necessity. Let's say that. But if it's done in a unique, playful style, it doesn't even feel like it's networking, and you feel like you're deeply connecting. So like, I've set up stuff for like these cards where we have in these random envelopes, we have a card, and then the printout of what the matching card is in another envelope, and then we have them mixed up, and then half the people get the match. You have to find your person, and then ask them the question on there. So it's like this, like, I love structure and I love synchronicity, right? Like, together. So there's some structure and then there's some synchronicity. And
love that.
But how do we just have more fun? But in fun just for the sake of fun is definitely worthwhile, and play for the sake of play is worthwhile. And when you add purpose underneath it, then it's really interesting too.
I agree. One of my friends, he has always done improv, his entire adult life. And I grew up doing improv, and I absolutely loved it. I still love it. Somehow I will find my way back to improv at some point in time, but I love that you described one of my favorite shows, Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, totally.
Use that. And because I do think when people feel safe, they'll be much more willing to do those things and be encouraged to think big and dream. And dreaming is, I think, one of the biggest pieces of being an entrepreneur. You've got to put the big ideas out there, and you've got to share them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yourself, no one will know.
And make it fun for other people to join you on the journey.
Totally. And I think, like you, the networking piece for me is so much fun, and so much of my favorite networking results in guests on my show. So having really great people with really great contributions is just a joy to bring to the masses. So it's so much fun to be able to share messages like yours. So Yanik, what inspires you?
A lot. I'm constantly curious about so many things. I love I don't know, it could just be like walking down the street, and if something catches my eye, I'm like, oh, why did that, what was it about that?
Yeah.
Be a colorful piece of artwork, or something that's engaging in a whole different way, or unique, conversation, or a way that the restaurant kind of like tried to bring me in, or like whatever it was. So
Yeah.
what inspires me is that. What also inspires me a lot is that what we talked about earlier about this evolutionary impulse, this really, what it feels like we're leaning into right now, where everyone's kind of getting the message that business as usual is not working. And so, yeah, so how do we show up to, like, I like this idea of basically like bloom where you're planted. And so like I don't know if it's one of the cards or one of my journal pages, but so the journal, I had this journal that I created, and it was from 108 days of journaling every single day. And then like doodling, and so like creating little bits of art every single day, where like these little hand drawn things.
So cool.
And so one of them was, so I spent every single night, no matter what time it was, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I would doodle a page. It was a little bit of like an art experiment for myself. And so I drew all these flowers, and then essentially I was going to write bloom where you're planted.
Yeah.
And then I literally fell asleep, and I wrote PLANE in my pen, and I'm like, ah. And I'm like, all right, well, there's no mistakes, right? So what is that going to be? So then it became bloom where you're planted. And it was so much more interesting, especially in the context of like, what category or industry or sector or marketplace are you in? So a lot of people are like, oh, I need to go over here and go do my real work. So imagine if wherever you were was the exact right spot, and whether it's being an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur or whatever it is, like that you can create and be like a lighthouse in whatever category you're in. And that's this is the time that we're heading for. And if everyone did that in their own little way, we start looking at all these little leverage points that we might have within our sphere. And,
so cool.
and there's a lot of opportunity there.
That's so cool. So what's next for you?
Well, that's a great question. There's like the micro what's next, and there's a macro what's next. So at the micro is getting more and more of my art out. So I'm excited by that. I call it the Cosmic Bakery and Joke Shop.
Nice.
Like putting out more and more of the art, but it has meaning behind it, and maybe would show up on co-working spaces walls that has ways for the whole group to come together, or people that work there to share what they're grateful for, or whatever, like interactive art and artifacts. So I really love that. Maybe a cosmic alarm clock that sits on your desk and rings at random inappropriate times, and then you get a nudge from the universe. So stuff like that, that's really fun for me. And then on the macro, the big picture is that whole, what my 111-year-old self told me, which is light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. So I see the work that we're doing with Maverick is one of those suns that's lighting 1,000 suns, but really bringing together this mycelium meshwork of these other networks of entrepreneurs and leaders and people that are transforming the world as these suns, and helping them be a lit more by exposing them to the wisdom of the world, like these amazing elders and wisdom keepers and shamans and those that I've had, unique privilege to learn from, but there's so many more too, and getting that out into the world.
I love it. And you kind of stole my last question, which is always, what would you like your legacy to be? But you've already talked about your 100-year-old self. So is there anything else you'd add?
Yeah, I guess, it's funny. There's a page in the journal about legacy, and it's like the more the more you focus on your legacy, I think the less you're like in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, well, what can I do that every single day is what I'm meant to be doing, and then it's just automatically going to be a byproduct.
Yeah.
And so for me, I love the juxtaposition of things like, so my kids are almost out of school now, but I just got back from my son from his last hockey tournament as a youth hockey player. He's 18. Aww. And so I've coached him since he was 4.
Oh my gosh.
Coach or assistant coach. And so like, and then with my daughter, like just to be around for like the little things and hopefully the bigger work in the world, like that has always been my intention.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, how do people find you, Yanik?
They can go to my every once in a while blog, which is yaniksilver.com, YANIK silver.com, or pick up a copy of Evolved Enterprise or Cosmic Journal, wherever they find their favorite books, probably on Amazon. And if they're a 7 or 8 figure and 9 figure leader, check out maverick1000.com.
Yes, guys, if you want to do something epic, go seek out Yanik, go find Maverick 1000. It's incredible. Someday I will be there. Not today.
You will definitely be there. And we're going to play some improv games and possibly some puppets.
My favorite. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. Yanik, you were fantastic. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a 5-star review, and thank you for listening. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would be ever so grateful. I hope you found it useful. Have a wonderful day.